He rescued the enemy's daughter. Now her mother demands him. The distress signal came from the wrong side of the line. Sergeant Cole Harlan saw it blink red on his visor display 3 seconds before the Velthari interceptor tried to put a plasma round through his cockpit. He rolled his scout runner hard left, and the shot clipped the stabilizer fin instead of his skull. Warning lights filled his panel. He was already descending, already losing altitude, and already making the kind of decision command would later call reckless in the debrief. He followed the signal down. The valley below was Velthari territory. Every rock, every tree, every shadow belonged to the enemy. His squad was 4 kilometers north, pulling back after a failed flank on the relay station at Ember Ridge. Nobody knew he had broken off. Nobody knew where he was going. The comm burst he sent was swallowed by the jamming field. The moment he dropped below the ridgeline, he was alone, and he was going in anyway. Cole set the runner down in a dry creek bed, choked with gray reeds. The landing was rough. He hit the ground hard enough to bite through his lip, and the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth as he pulled his helmet's seal and climbed out, with his rifle already up. The air smelled like sulfur and burned vegetation. Velthari artillery had been working this valley over for 2 days. Whatever had been alive here a week ago was ash now. The signal pulsed from a collapsed structure 40 meters ahead. He moved through the rubble fast and low. His boots crunched on shattered tile. He registered the architecture as he passed through it. Civilian construction. Not a bunker, not a relay station, not anything military, a home or what had been one. 3 outer walls were standing. The 4th had folded inward and taken the roof with it. Dust still drifted from the collapse. Under a section of fallen beam, half buried in debris, something moved. Cole stopped. It was small. The instinct that fired in his chest was not tactical. It was older than training, older than war, older than the 26 years of his life. He was moving toward it before he had consciously chosen to. He cleared the first piece of debris with his bare hands, setting his rifle across a chunk of wall beside him. The beam was heavy. He got under it and pushed until his back screamed, and it shifted enough. The child looked up at him. Large eyes, the pale gold of the Velthari, wide with fear and some confusion, maybe. The creatures humans had been fighting for 3 years were bipedal, and at a distance they looked almost human. Close up, the differences were clear. The jaw was structured differently. The ears sat higher on the skull. The fingers were longer, each joint a little too deliberate in its movement. But the child looking up at him was simply a child, small, dusty, a cut across one temple still seeping. Maybe 6 years old, if Velthari development tracked anything like human development at all. It made no sound. It stared at him. Cole crouched down. He kept his voice low and level, the way his mother had taught him to talk to frightened animals. He had no idea if the child understood a word of standard. He did not care. The tone was what mattered. "I've got you," he said. "You're okay." He pulled the wallet free carefully, checking for brakes, finding none. He wrapped his field jacket around the small shoulders. The child gripped the fabric with those long fingers and did not let go. That was when the secondary collapse started. The remaining wall groaned. Cole grabbed the child and ran. The wall came down exactly where they had been standing a second and a half ago, throwing a wave of grit and splinters across his back. He kept running until he reached the creek bed. He put the child down behind the runner and spun around, rifle up, scanning. 3 Velthari soldiers stood at the edge of the rubble field. They were not raising their weapons. That fact registered in his mind as strange and important simultaneously. 2 of them were looking at the child. The 3rd, the one in the center wearing the rank markers of an officer, was looking at Cole with an expression he could not read at all. None of them fired. Cole did not fire either. The standoff lasted 4 seconds. It lasted longer than most firefights he had survived. Then the officer spoke a single word to the child. The child answered in a small voice. The officer's expression shifted. Something moved across that alien face that Cole had no name for, but he recognized it anyway. He had seen it on his own mother's face once, when he was 8 years old and had fallen out of a tree, and she had come running. She had not known whether he was dead until she saw him sitting up. He remembered that look. He was seeing it now. The officer looked at him again. Then she did something that made no tactical sense whatsoever. She reached up and removed her sidearm from its holster with 2 fingers, set it carefully on a piece of rubble, and stepped back. Cole stared. One of the other soldiers said something sharp and urgent. The officer cut them off with a single gesture. She held Cole's gaze. She was waiting for something. He understood. He set his rifle down. The child ran to the officer and was caught in those long arms and held tightly. The officer's eyes closed for just a moment. When they opened, she looked at Cole across the distance between them, over the body of the child she was holding, and the thing in her expression was not gratitude exactly. It was something that did not have a clean translation in any human language he knew. He picked his rifle back up. She picked her sidearm back up. Her soldiers were talking again, louder this time, and she answered them in a voice that ended discussion. Cole climbed back into his runner. He flew north. He did not look back. In the debrief 2 days later, he said his comm had malfunctioned during the retreat. He said nothing about the valley. He said nothing about the signal or the child or the 3 Velthari soldiers who had let him walk away. He thought about it for a long time afterward, though. He thought about it more than he expected to. The officer's face stayed with him like something he could not file away properly, something that did not fit any category he had built for the people he was fighting. He was not sure what that meant. He was not sure it meant anything. He went back to his unit. He cleaned his rifle. He ate a ration pack that tasted like cardboard and recycled protein. He slept 4 hours on a cot that was 2 inches too short. The war continued. For now, the translation request came through official channels, which made it stranger, not less strange. Cole was running perimeter diagnostics on a forward sensor array when Lieutenant Dara Sloan dropped a data chip on the equipment case beside him. He looked at it without picking it up. "Command wants you in the briefing room," she said. "Coalition liaison has a specific request." "What kind of specific request?" "The kind that came with your name on it from the Velthari delegation." He picked up the chip. The briefing room smelled like recycled air and cold coffee. 5 people were already seated when Cole walked in. Colonel Ned Price sat at the head of the table with the expression he wore when he was managing something he did not entirely understand. 2 analysts from Intelligence Division had their tablets open and were very deliberately not looking at Cole as he entered. A coalition diplomatic aide named Grant Osei sat nearest the door with his hands folded and his face neutral in the particular way of people paid to keep their faces neutral. At the far end of the table beside an empty chair sat the Velthari officer from the valley. Cole stopped moving for exactly 1 second. She was watching him, the same pale gold eyes. The rank markers on her uniform had changed, he noticed. More of them now. She sat very still with the specific quality of stillness that some people achieved only under enormous self-control. "Surgeon Harlan," Price said. "Sit down." Cole sat. Price nodded at Osei, who cleared his throat and began explaining. 3 weeks ago, an incident in the Ember Valley region had been flagged by Velthari Command as a matter of diplomatic interest. A human soldier had entered Velthari-controlled territory during a combat withdrawal and had recovered a Velthari civilian child from a collapsed structure. The child was the daughter of Commander Vesa Orlan, senior tactical officer of the Velthari's 3rd Engagement Division. Commander Orlan had filed an official record of the incident with her own command. She had also made a formal request, transmitted through the ceasefire negotiation channel, to speak with the human soldier involved. Cole looked at Commander Orlan. She was looking at him with the same patient, assessing quality she had shown in the valley. "The commander has requested," Osei said carefully, "a direct conversation with the individual responsible for her daughter's recovery. She has indicated that this conversation is a personal matter rather than a military one. The coalition has agreed to facilitate it as a gesture of good faith during the current negotiation period." Price looked at Cole. "You have about 45 seconds to tell me anything you left out of your post-mission report," Cole told him. "All of it. In 30 seconds, because there was less to it than anyone in the room seemed to expect." When he was done, the room was quiet. Commander Orlan spoke. Her voice was lower than he remembered. Or perhaps the ruins had made everything sound different. The translator earpiece converted her words with the slight half-second delay he had been trained to expect from Velthari translation tech. The syntax came out formal and a little stiff, the way all machine translations did. "You did not have to stop," she said. "You were in danger. Our signal was not intended for human receivers. You had no reason to enter." "I know," Cole said. "Then what was your reason?" He thought about it. He could give her the answer that sounded clean and simple, the one about instinct or training or basic human decency. He had a feeling she would see through all of those to whatever was underneath. "I heard a distress signal," he said. "I don't turn those off." She considered that for a moment. "My daughter's name is Rava. She is 7 years old. She was in that structure because she had followed a damaged companion unit that had wandered from our field station. She did not tell anyone where she was going." A pause. "She is very much like her father in that way." Cole said nothing. The past tense landed quietly in the room. She told me what you said to her, Commander Orlan continued. The words were difficult for our translator to render precisely, but she understood the meaning. She said the human soldier told her she was okay. Cole nodded. I wanted to verify that the individual who did this was real, she said. Some of my staff believed I had misidentified the situation. They believed you entered our territory for intelligence-gathering purposes and stumbled onto the child incidentally. That's a reasonable assumption, Cole said. It is not correct. No, he agreed. It's not. Another silence settled over the room. Grant C. was writing something on his tablet. The intelligence analysts were still very deliberately neutral. Price was watching Cole with the careful attention of someone who was recalculating something. Commander Orlan stood. She was taller than he remembered, or the room was smaller. She placed something on the table and slid it toward him. It was a small object, round and flat, made of a deep blue material that caught the light strangely. Velthari make, obviously. He did not touch it. It is not a weapon or a tracking device, she said, reading something in his hesitation correctly. It is what my people give when a debt exists that cannot be measured in ordinary terms. He picked it up. It was lighter than he expected. Warm, the way metal gets warm when someone has been holding it. My daughter drew it, Commander Orlan said. She wanted you to have something. She was very specific that it should be the blue one. Cole looked at the object in his hand. It was marked in Velthari script around the edge. He could not read it. He was abruptly aware that he probably should say something, but had no idea what that something was. Thank you, he said. It felt completely insufficient. No, she said. That is my line. She sat back down. The meeting resumed its official character, diplomatic protocols, negotiation windows, ceasefire terms. Cole sat through 2 more hours of it, with a small blue token in his closed fist, and Commander Orlan across the table, and the conversation they had just had sitting between them, like a door that had opened into a room neither of them had expected to find. He did not know, that afternoon, that she had specifically requested him for the 3-day Joint Access Survey mission that Command would announce the following morning. He did not know that she had read his service record twice before making the request. He did not know that the diplomatic aide Grant O.C. had filed a quiet note to his own superiors that evening, flagging the interaction as something worth watching. Cole went back to his bunk. He set the blue token on the shelf beside his water canteen. He lay down. He was still thinking about it when he fell asleep. In the morning, Dara Sloan knocked on his doorframe with that particular expression she reserved for delivering orders that she personally found interesting. Get your field kit, she said. You've been reassigned. The joint survey mission had 3 rules, and Cole knew, before they crossed the demarcation line, that all 3 were going to be tested. Rule 1 was no weapons discharge except in direct defense of life. Rule 2 was that all communication between human and Velthari team members was to be logged. Rule 3 was that in the event of contact with hostile third-party forces, specifically the Karath Raider units that had been hitting supply lines for both sides, the teams were to disengage and withdraw rather than engage. The third rule was the one that lasted the shortest amount of time. The survey zone was a 20-kilometer corridor running through what had been, before the war, a Velthari agricultural region. Now it was a patchwork of blast craters, toppled structures, and secondary growth beginning to reclaim the open ground. The joint team consisted of Cole and Sergeant Pete Navarro from the human side, and 2 Veltharsi survey specialists, plus Commander Orlan herself from the other. The specialists, whose name I not pronounce without the earpiece assisting him, were named something close to Evan and Delrin in translation. They were younger than Orlan, and moved with the quick, observant quality of people who were more comfortable with data than with combat. Navarro had been briefed, but being briefed was different from standing next to a Velthari officer in a blown-out agricultural processing building, while she pointed out structural features on a sensor schematic and expected you to respond intelligently. Cole watched Navarro recalibrate in real time and found it almost amusing. The first day passed without incident. They documented 3 sites, logged sensor data, shared a field ration stop at midday in a silence that was awkward for exactly 12 minutes, and then became something more like neutral ground. Commander Orlan asked him a question about human architectural standards in agricultural construction. He answered it. She answered one of his questions about Velthari soil composition surveys. Evan and Delrin shared data with Navarro, and the 3 of them were examining a growth pattern on a cracked retaining wall with what appeared to be genuine mutual interest by late afternoon. It was almost strange how fast the professional layer snapped into place, once everyone stopped waiting for the other side to do something threatening. Day 2 was when the Karath arrived. Cole heard them before the sensors flagged them. 3 years of war had calibrated something in his ears that no instrument entirely replaced. He was on the upper level of a gutted storage facility when the sound reached him, the low mechanical hum of Karath runners, and he was moving toward the stairs and keying his radio before the first alert pinged. "Contact," he said. "North-northeast. 4 units, maybe more." Commander Orlan's response was immediate. She was already pulling Evan back from the exposed window. "Confirmed. My sensors show 6. 6, Navarro said from outside with feeling. Karath raiders operated outside both military structures and apparently both sets of rules of engagement. They did not care about demarcation lines, ceasefire zones, or survey missions. They cared about salvageable tech and opportunistic engagement. A group of 5 people, 2 of them unarmed specialists, in an isolated structure in contested territory, was exactly the kind of target they looked for. The 3 survey team members were not soldiers. Orlan was, Cole was, Navarro was. That was 3 against 6, with the additional complication that 2 of the 3 were technically supposed to be on opposite sides of an ongoing war. Nobody said anything about that. Cole moved to the north window. "Orlan, how far is your backup evac point?" 4 kilometers south. Theirs is 3 kilometers east. Too far. They'll cut us off before either reaches us. She was beside him at the window, close enough that he could see the way her jaw set when she was processing rapid tactical information. "I concur. Then we hold here and we deal with it." A half-second pause. "The third rule." "The third rule assumes we have somewhere to withdraw to," Cole said. "We don't." Another pause. Shorter. "Agreed." What happened in the next 22 minutes was later described by Grant Osey, after reviewing the mission logs, as the most tactically efficient, improvised engagement in the survey program's history. He wrote this in an official report that used very careful language. The careful language was because the improvised engagement involved a human sergeant and a Velthari commander coordinating suppression fire through a burned-out agricultural building against 6 Karath assault units, communicating through a mix of translated commands and increasingly abbreviated hand signals, as the situation moved too fast for full language. Cole did not think of it in those terms at the time. At the time he was moving through the structure, covering the stairwell, watching Orlan clear the east approach with a precision that was honestly impressive, and occasionally shouting things at Navarro that were less than fully professional under fire. 3 of the 6 Karath units retreated after the 3rd engagement point. 2 more were disabled by the time the automated distress response from Orlan's command post reached them. The 6th was already gone. When the Velthari response unit arrived 12 minutes later, they found Commander Orlan and Sergeant Harlan standing in the processing building's main floor, with the 2 survey specialists uninjured, and Navarro sitting against the wall with a graze across his forearm. That he was insisting, loudly, was not a serious injury. The Velthari response unit took one long look at the scene. Their leader looked at Orlan. Orlan said something brief. The unit spread out to secure the perimeter without another word. Cole sat down on a piece of fallen structure and took his helmet off. His hands were steady. His head was very loud and very clear at the same time, the specific post-engagement state that he had never found a word for. Orlan sat down 2 meters away. She also removed her helmet. She was looking at the floor, and her breathing was the controlled kind. The kind that meant she was running the same come-down process he was. "Your right flank timing was late on the 2nd engagement," she said. "I know," he said. "Your eastern coverage opened a gap in the first 30 seconds. "I know," she said. "A beat. Your specialist," she said. "The one called Pete. He is not comfortable with us. He'll be all right. I am not criticizing. It is simply observed. He's adjusting," Cole said. "He's faster at it than most." She looked at him directly. "You are not uncomfortable." It was not a question. He answered it anyway. "Not anymore," he said. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked away. Her fingers were turning something over in her hand, he noticed. A small adjustment to a piece of equipment. A habit, under stress, maybe. "Riva has asked about you," she said. "Since the briefing room." He did not know what to do with that, so he said nothing. "She wants to know if the human soldier knows how to play strategy games. She is very serious about this question." Cole almost laughed. The sound that came out was not quite a laugh, but was in that vicinity. "Tell her I've been known to hold my own." Orlan's expression shifted. He was getting better at reading it. This one, he was fairly sure, was the Velthari equivalent of a suppressed smile. The survey team was evacuated by nightfall. The mission was officially suspended pending security review. Cole and Navarro were flown back to the forward base while Orlan and her specialists were collected by Velthari transport. Cole filed a clean after-action report. He noted the contact. He noted the engagement outcome. He noted that the joint team had responded effectively under unexpected conditions. He did not note the conversation at the end, because it was not tactically relevant. He thought about it on the flight back, though. He thought about what she had said. He thought about a 7-year-old named Riva, who was apparently very serious about strategy games, and for reasons he could not have fully articulated, this made him feel something specific in the region of his chest that had nothing to do with the post-engagement adrenaline clearing from his system. He looked out the transport window at the dark valley below. The war was still there. All of it, the lines on the maps, the relay stations, the long list of damaged things. But something had changed shape in the last 48 hours. He was not sure what to call it yet. He was fairly sure he would be finding out. The ceasefire negotiations moved faster after the survey program's incident report circulated. Cole found this out from Dara Sloan, who found things out the way she always did, through a combination of legitimate briefings and what she called professional attentiveness to corridor conversations. The incident at the agricultural processing building had apparently demonstrated something to the analysts, both sides, that 3 years of war had failed to demonstrate through any other means. Two soldiers from opposing forces had defended each other's lives without hesitation, without orders, and without any framework telling them to do so. Command on both sides found this inconvenient and useful in equal measure. Cole was pulled into 3 separate debrief sessions in 6 days. He answered the same questions in slightly different order, for slightly different panels. He was accurate each time. What he did not include in any of the sessions was the part of the post-engagement conversation that he kept returning to without fully meaning to. He was transferred to the diplomatic support detail on the morning of day 8. It was framed as a temporary assignment. He was told his field experience and his existing contact with Commander Orlan made him a useful presence in the negotiation support structure. He was told this in official language by Colonel Price, who also told him, off the record, that this was the most politically delicate position the man had placed any of his people in, and that Cole was not to do anything that would require Price to write a difficult report. Cole said he understood. He was not entirely sure that he did. The negotiations facility was a converted relay station in the demilitarized corridor, refitted with meeting rooms and communication arrays, and the particular overclean smell of stasis that had been scrubbed of everything that might indicate they had ever belonged to anyone in particular. Cole reported in, was processed, was given a small room with a window facing east, and was sitting on the edge of his cot, trying to decide whether he wanted to eat first or check in with the support team first when someone knocked on his door. He opened it. Commander Orlan stood in the corridor. She was not in full combat configuration. The survey mission was the first time he had seen her without the full tactical layer, and this was the second. She wore what appeared to be a Velthari equivalent of a diplomatic uniform, structured but less armored, in deep gray with the rank markers present but smaller than the field version. She looked, he thought, like someone who had also been processed and assigned a room, and was now also making decisions about what to do first. "I was told you were assigned to this post," she said. "An hour ago," he confirmed. "I was told 2 days ago," she said. "I requested it," he looked at her. "You requested it," he repeated. "I told you," she said. "A debt exists that cannot be measured in ordinary terms. I do not intend to let it go unaddressed because the logistics are complicated." She paused. "Also, Riva sent something." She held out a small wrapped package. He took it. Inside was a flat piece of what turned out to be Velthari drawing medium, covered in marks he could not read, and what appeared to be a very detailed strategic game board drawn from memory with 7-year-old seriousness. "She drew the opening position of Cathara," Orlan said. "It is the game she is best at. She wants you to know she is willing to start from the second position if you need the advantage." Cole looked at the drawing for a moment. "Tell her she'll need that second position herself," he said. Orlan's expression did the thing again. The suppressed quality, he was definitely reading it right now. The following 2 weeks were the most unusual of Cole's military career, and his military career had included getting shot at from orbit, surviving a secondary collapse in Velthari territory, and being accidentally locked in an ammunition storage unit for 6 hours due to a door malfunction that nobody on his team ever fully admitted to causing. He and Commander Orlan were not negotiators, they were support. They ran logistics checks, confirmed communications security, provided tactical assessment when the negotiators needed to know whether a proposed demarcation line was defensible in practice or only on paper. They were in the same spaces, sometimes for 8 or 9 hours at a stretch. They ate at the same facility table, translators running between them for the first 3 days. And then with the translators less and less, because she had spent the last 3 years learning functional standard for intelligence purposes. And he had picked up enough Velthari from his field experience that they could cover the gaps between them. He learned her name properly, not Commander Orlan, Vesa. In Velthari, the first name was the formal one in certain contexts and the informal one in others, and the distinction was tied to a web of social rules that she explained to him over a working dinner on day 5, with the same focused patience she appeared to apply to everything. He told her his first name was Cole, which she already knew, and that his full name was Coleman, which she found extremely funny for reasons that took another 20 minutes to fully unpack and had to do with a Velthari word that sounded similar and meant something undignified that he made her repeat 3 times to confirm she was not misremembering it. He had not laughed like that in a long time. Riva came to the facility on day 11. Orlan's command had authorized a supervised family visit as part of the diplomatic normalization process. Cole saw the child in the corridor outside the meeting rooms, standing very straight beside a Velthari escort, holding her drawing satchel against her chest. She saw him at the same moment. She looked at him for 1 full second. Then she turned to Orlan and said something very fast in Velthari. Orlan said something back. The child turned to Cole and said, with the careful, deliberate diction of someone speaking a language they had been studying very specifically for this moment, "Do you know Cathara?" Cole crouched down to her level. "I know enough," he said. "You'll still beat me." Riva considered this with the gravity of someone who was taking it as a formal challenge. Then she reached into her satchel and produced a portable Velthari game board, with the focused efficiency of someone who had prepared for exactly this scenario. They played for an hour in a side room, while the negotiators continued 3 rooms away. Riva beat him in 40 minutes, which she appeared to have expected, and then spent the remaining time explaining exactly where he had gone wrong with the patience of someone who genuinely wanted him to understand. Orlan sat in the doorway, not playing, watching. He glanced at her once near the end. She was looking at Riva. The expression on her face was the one he had seen in the valley, and in the briefing room, and in the agricultural processing building after the Karath were gone. The one without a clean translation. He thought he was beginning to understand what it meant anyway. The negotiations reached a preliminary agreement on day 14. Cole was in the room when the first signatures were entered. The ceremony was small and deliberately low-key, which the diplomatic staff explained was intentional, meant to reduce the target profile of the moment for factions on both sides who would prefer it not to happen. He stood at the edge of the room and watched 3 years of war reach its first formal pause, and felt something complicated and hard to name. Afterward, in the corridor, Orlan found him. "You are being reassigned," she said. It was not a question. She had access to the logistics summaries. "Tomorrow morning," he confirmed. "Back to my unit for the transition period." She was quiet for a moment. The corridor was empty. The facility hummed around them. "Cole," she said. She had used his name only 3 times before this. He had been counting, without meaning to, the way you count things that matter without deciding they matter. "I want to say something, and I want to say it correctly," she said. "So I am going to take a moment to find the right words." "Take whatever time you need," he said. She looked at him with the same directness she brought to everything. "My daughter is safe, because you made a decision that had no benefit to you," she said. "You have treated her as a person worth your time, which is not something she receives from everyone even on our own side of the line. And you have treated me as a person worth your consideration, which is not something I expected from any of this." She paused. "I do not know what the next stage of this looks like. I know the war is pausing, not ending. I know the logistics of what comes next are genuinely complicated." "They are," he agreed. "I am telling you," she said. "Because as I believe in saying things that are true rather than waiting for the correct circumstances, since the correct circumstances have a way of not arriving." He looked at her. "Vesa," he said, and used her name carefully the way she had taught him, in the particular register that meant something specific. She held very still. "I think the next stage involves a rematch," he said. "Riva told me she wants to play me again when I've practiced enough that it's worth her time." The suppressed quality broke, just slightly, into something that was fully present and real. She did say that, Orlan confirmed. Then I'll need to practice, he said. I'll need somewhere to do it. She looked at him for a long moment. I will send you a game board, she said. When you get back to your unit, I'll be ready when you send it. She nodded once, the formal Velthari affirmation that was also, he had learned, the informal one when the context was right. He went back to his room and packed his kit. In the morning he left on the transport north. The game board arrived at his unit post 4 days later, with a note from Riva that said, in careful standard lettering, that someone had clearly helped her with. Study the left flank. You always forget the left flank. He read it twice. He was smiling when he put it down. The first time Cole walked into a Velthari settlement as something other than a soldier. He was wearing civilian clothes and carrying a strategy game board, in a case that had been a gift from a 7-year-old, who had beaten him 11 times in the past 4 months. He was not nervous, he told himself this several times. The settlement was called Erath in standard translation, a mid-sized residential cluster in the northern reach of the former contested zone, now designated a reconciliation corridor under the terms of the armistice. It looked nothing like the burned valley where all of this had started. The structures were intact. Velthari families moved along the paths between buildings in the late afternoon light. Children ran ahead of adults in the same universal pattern that children ran everywhere. 3 of them stopped to stare at him as he walked through the main path. He was the first human most of them had seen outside of a military context. He nodded to them. One of them nodded back, very seriously. Orlan was waiting at the entrance of the block where she lived. She was in the same kind of informal dress he had seen once at the facility, without the rank markers. She looked, he thought, like someone who had decided to be off-duty and was doing it with intention. Riva was beside her, holding the portable game board she had apparently carried to the door specifically so it would be the first thing he saw. You practiced, Riva said immediately. It was not a question. I practiced, he confirmed. You will see, she said, with a 7-year-old's complete lack of diplomatic softening, and turned and walked back inside. Orlan watched this and then looked at Cole with the expression he knew now. She also practiced, Orlan said, extensively. Good, Cole said. I would have been disappointed otherwise. He dipped across the threshold. The evening was long, and the game lasted 3 rounds, of which Cole won 1, which Riva examined from multiple angles before formally acknowledging. Dinner was served at a low table in the Velthari style, on cushioned floor seating that was not quite the right height for his legs, and he ate something that he could not identify, but which was the best thing he had eaten in 8 months. Riva fell asleep in her chair after the 3rd game, with the game board still in her lap, and Orlan carried her out without comment and came back. They sat across the low table in the quiet of the settlement at night. You won a round, she said. Left flank, he said. She taught me well. Orlan looked at him. The directness was still there. The same quality she had brought to every conversation they had ever had. From the valley rubble to the negotiation facility to this room. It is complicated, she said, what this is. I know, he said. My people are watching. Yours are watching. The armistice is 6 months old and fragile in 3 places that I am not supposed to tell you about, but you have already read in the logistics summaries. I know, he said again. Riva, she said, and stopped. She started again. Riva has not had a great deal of stability. The last 3 years took things from us. I am careful about what she attaches to. That's the right call, he said. She looked at him. You understand what I am saying? I understand, he said. I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to. A long quiet. I am not telling you to, she said. He nodded. Outside, the settlement sounds continued. Somewhere 2 blocks over, children who had been playing were now being called inside by a voice that carried the universal parental frequency of it, is time to come in. The light through the window was the Velthari equivalent of dusk, a little more blue than he was used to, a little longer in the way it held. Cole, she said. Yes, you came a long way. It turns out, he said, I go where the signal takes me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said very simply, I know. I was counting on it. He looked at her across the low table in the blue evening light. The war had paused. The maps still had lines on them. The logistics were genuinely complicated and would remain so for a long time. None of that was resolved or simple or clean. But Riva was asleep in the next room with a strategy board in her lap and a record of 11 wins against a human soldier who had come back to practice. And Vesa Orlan was looking at him the way she had looked at him in the valley when he had set his rifle down, which was also the way she had looked at him in every room since then. and which he had spent 4 months learning to read correctly. He had read it correctly. He reached across the table. She met him halfway. Outside, the last light held as long as it could. Then the stars came out, and they were not so different from the ones he knew.